All right, guys, we're going to talk about robo-advisors and some common misconceptions. A robo-advisor is not a lighter version of an investment advisor. It's under the same fiduciary framework, it's just implemented through software, right? And so the core legal reality is that we have to start with first principles. There is no robo exception. Under the Advisors Act, you're still an investment advisor. And that means that you still owe a fiduciary duty, best interest, suitability, full and fair disclosure, all of it applies. The only thing that changes is how the advice is delivered. So in terms of registration architecture, there's a business decision that happens first. Before the product, before the code, there's a structural decision that you need to make. And that's, are you going to register traditionally at the state level and then scale into SEC registration when you have the assets under management to support that? Or are you going to rely on the Internet Advisor exemption under Rule 203(a)(2), Section E? That exemption is often misunderstood. That's the purpose of this video. It's not regulatory relief, it's a jurisdictional shortcut, if you will, right? So to rely on it, the platform must deliver advice exclusively through interactive digital interfaces, be fully operational and continuously available. It must generate advice through software, algorithms, AI, if you will, not personnel, so no human beings behind this thing. It has to eliminate meaningful non-digital advisory activity, and this forces a binary outcome. Either you are a true robo-advisor or you're not. And the economic appeal, obviously, here is very real, and a lot of my clients are very interested in this, because your portfolio managers become algorithms, right? The investment committees become encoded logic, and client interaction becomes more of a structured onboarding flow, through your UX, and that reduces your headcount, it reduces licensing burdens and marginal cost of scale. However, the regulatory burden doesn't shrink, it relocates. So let's talk about how the SEC evaluates you. In the traditional model, the SEC evaluates human beings. Did the advisor understand the client? Did the advisor exercise judgment appropriately? Did they disclose conflicts? In a robo model, those same questions still apply, but they're applied to the system. They're applied to the code. Did the platform collect sufficient client data? Does the algorithm produce suitable recommendations? Are assumptions and limitations clearly disclosed to the client through the system? Is the system tested, monitored, controlled properly, right? Fiduciary duty is no longer exercised by a person in this context. It's expressed through code on the platform. And so disclosure becomes, in some ways, more demanding, right? Not less. There's no human buffer to clarify a misunderstanding. Your Form ADV and client-facing disclosures through the platform must independently explain how the algorithm works, what inputs it relies on, what it does not consider, and where it could be vulnerable and fail. And if a client doesn't understand the system, consent is arguably not meaningful. I think there's a suitability as engineering issue here, where suitability shifts from a conversation to a design of the platform. And the question there is now the mechanism for satisfying your duty of care, right? It must elicit enough information to support recommendations, be understandable to a retail user. It has to detect inconsistencies or illogical responses. And it has to define the boundaries of what the system doesn't evaluate, right? So this is a little bit more than simple UX design. This is a regulatory infrastructure that also probably needs to look pretty as well, right? And so your compliance program will then expand, into the technology oversight, and you're expected to govern the algorithm's development and testing, version control, change management, third-party vendors and APIs, cybersecurity and data protection, digital marketing, communications. How's that update with disclosures and, making sure you're making accurate, statements to clients. And so the SEC is not just asking whether the policies exist, they're asking whether the system behaves in accordance with those policies, right? Which is something that we see in a traditional model as well, but there's just less room for error, right? When it's a computer and it's operating at scale and it's code. So the internet advisor exemption imposes a certain level of discipline, from an IT and technical standpoint, and you can't casually layer in human advice without breaking your regulatory basis. It's important to understand this robo-advisor model. First of all, I actually am a big fan. I have several clients who have either moved to that model from a traditional model, and then I have a couple clients who are startups who went to that model first. And I think in a digitally native economy, it makes a lot of sense. And so if you're able to algorithmically layer on that advice, and it's really just part of a larger structure of what you're doing, and you can allocate human capital and human talent to do other things that support different lines of the business. And this advisor really is the standalone technological infrastructure that's bolted on to make a certain feature available. That's really where that makes a lot of sense, right? But I'm happy to talk more. My name is Braeden Anderson. I'm a partner at Gesmer Updegrove. Hope that you found this video helpful. If you're considering a robo-advisor, have any questions, I'd love to learn more about what you're building, what your ideas are, and see how we can potentially help. That's all for now. See ya.